Welcome to In the Know with Erin Glow, a podcast bringing you information and inspiration from people in all walks of life. This is the Halloween Special, Part 1. Welcome to In the Know with Erin Glow's special Halloween episode. Happy Halloween, everybody. This is the first of many episodes I'll be having in between my regular interview episodes with guests that will feature a special theme. Now, unlike the regular one-topic episodes, these themed episodes will feature a lot of different topics based on one theme, such as this episode's Halloween theme, and will include multiple guests and other fun and interesting things. So let's dive right in. Now, before we get started, I just want to let our listeners know we'll be breaking down this episode and its topics into various spooky categories that are all perfect to talk about in the Halloween season. But before we begin, I want to introduce 3 special guests who I chose to be a part of this episode, not only because they're my good friends, but also because of their interests and backgrounds, which you'll find out about right now. First, we have Derek. Derek is a YouTuber and a lifelong fan of horror movies and true crime stories. He sometimes does reviews of horror movies on his YouTube channel, so he's a really great guest to have on this podcast. He lives in Maryland, so welcome, Derek.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here.
Of course.
Antonio is my next guest. He goes by Tony. He's a lifelong friend of mine who's a live streamer, YouTuber, and activist. He enjoys horror and other types of disturbing movies, and he likes to keep up with true crime stories. He lives in Boston. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. We've known each other since we were, 17, right?
16 or 17, yeah.
It's crazy. And now you're on my podcast, and now we're in our 30s, and life is grand.
Oh, don't say our age. Don't say our age.
Okay. And the third guest is Josh. He also goes by Reaper. He's involved in the gaming scene, and he oversees a gaming page with Tony that has 6,000 plus followers. He's highly interested in paranormal stuff, and he's been involved in the paranormal field for 16 years. He lives in Denver, Colorado. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, great to be here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you all here. So grab a drink, make some s'mores, and light your favorite Halloween-themed candle, and get ready for some fun conversation and interesting stories. The first part of the episode is Horror Movie Huddle. Now, I want to give a disclaimer before we get into this part. I just want to let everyone listening know that we're going to be discussing a lot of horror movies, old and new, in detail here. So if you haven't seen any of them and want to, be aware that there will be spoilers, so you may want to skip over those movies until you see them. First set of movies we're going to talk about are classic movies. We'll be discussing the top 5 classic horror films, the films people think of when you mention horror films, and we're going to be going in order from oldest to newest. And we're starting with the original slasher film, Psycho. Psycho came out in 1960, many years ago, and it's directed by Alfred Hitchcock, the one and only. Now, the screenplay of Psycho was actually based on the 1959 novel of the same name, written by Robert Bloch. I think that's how you say it. Just keep in mind, all my plot descriptions are actually from IMDb or Google, so I didn't write them myself. Want to credit them. So here's the plot of Psycho. Phoenix secretary Marion Crane, while on the lam after stealing $40,000 from her employer in order to run away with her boyfriend, Sam Loomis, is overcome by exhaustion during a heavy rainstorm. Traveling on the back roads to avoid the police, she stops for the night at the ramshackle Bates Motel and meets the polite but highly strung proprietor Norman Bates. He's a young man with an interest in taxidermy and has a difficult relationship with his mother. Okay, now I saw Psycho actually for the first time a couple years ago, so I was late in the game, but of course, before that, everybody knows the shower scene in Psycho. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you know that shower scene where Janet Leigh gets slashed with a knife in the shower. So we had Janet Leigh in the movie. She is the original Scream Queen. She was the main character of this movie. She's actually the real life mother of soon-to-be Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis. So that's really cool. I didn't know that until later on. So let's talk about this movie for a little bit. Did you guys know that Janet Leigh was Jamie Lee Curtis's mother in real life? Am I the only one late in the game to that?
I actually did know, but I didn't find out until pretty later on as well.
Okay. What about you, Tony?
I knew because my father he always had horror movies on as we were growing up. And during the time of Halloween coming out is when he pointed out, that's her daughter,
Yeah. Josh?
I mean, I didn't really get to see this movie in the entirety. Like, it was one of those movies that was playing on the background of things. It was never, like, I never sat down and watched it.
Yeah. That's how I was until like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the exact same way. I've seen bits and parts, and obviously I've seen the shower scene. I know all about that, but I didn't sit down and watch it from beginning to end until like a year or two ago.
Right, so the setting of the movie is interesting. Okay, so it's at Bates Motel, Norman Bates and his mother's hotel, which is supposed to be off the California main highway. They also have the creepy Bates house that they live in on the hill above the hotel. The house is very classic too, right? You guys have seen that house before.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's still studios in California. I think there's a studio that has like a replica of the house. Do you guys like know what that house still like? Is the original still somewhere?
I believe so, because I believe the house still exists. Like the real life house you're talking about, not the movie set house.
So there was a real life house.
Yes, there's a real life house like that was like the movie was based off of, like that creepy type of house. But
okay.
Other than that, yeah.
Okay, so we have the creepy setting. We also have a serial killer plot here. You have this young charismatic guy. He owns this motel alone. He says his mother lives with him in the house, but you never really see her until one point. There's no one around. He's creepy yet charismatic, like I said. So Alfred Hitchcock, what do you think about the way he portrayed Norman in the movie as this young charismatic guy? Was that one of the first? Because usually you do a horror movie and there's usually you think of a killer and you think of somebody like ugly and just monstrous. And
Yeah, I think it was smartly done because, like you said, it was the first one. So I think back then you really didn't see a lot. Like you had a monster movie every now and then, but not those, grotesque, gory killers. And I think it kind of added to the creep factor that he just is this kind of normal, like you said, charismatic guy, but he's actually a serial killer. So yeah, it adds to it a lot.
It's definitely a psychological drama. It's based off a couple of things that were true. And basically he made the character literally have, quote unquote mommy issues. It wasn't per se a slasher film. I mean, it was original in its kind, but it brought on the thinkers, the horror movies that you sit back and you have to go, oh, especially when it came to the ending and throughout the series as well. 'Cause it carries on.
it definitely makes you think, like, why is this guy like that? Why is he killing people when he seems like he could be a nice, genuine guy? What's the deal with his mother? Why is he always concerned about her? And then you realize the mother's not even alive at the end, and he's actually taken on her persona and has her dead body in the house.
Yeah, that explains itself the further you get into the wormhole of Psycho, and I think it's Psycho 5 explains it, of the type of mother he had, how he was growing up, and he calls in a radio station and he talks to this, like a therapist on the radio, and explains all of it. And it was clearly, we could tell in the first movie, the original Psycho in 1960, that it was clearly mommy issues, that this person was severely broken by his environment.
Right, yeah. I think there are 4 Psychos, so maybe you're talking about Psycho 4.
Yeah, I was just about to say
Yeah.
that.
Was it Psycho 4? Then yeah, it's
Yeah.
Psycho 4.
Yeah, okay, so we have Anthony Perkins. Let's talk about him. Anthony Perkins played Norman Bates in Psycho through Psycho 4. Classic villain.
Yeah, I mean he's perfect because especially at the very end scene from Psycho, he pretty I don't know what the look's called, but where you're kind of looking down a little bit and you raise your eyes up, it's just that perfect creepy serial killer look that without Anthony Perkins that may have never ever been seen the light of day.
Yeah, he perfected that look. It's kind of like lift the head a little bit, gaze the eyes out. Yeah,
Yeah.
slight smile. What do you think about? Have you seen Anthony Perkins in anything else? I haven't.
No, he really stuck to the Psycho franchise. Um, he started in the 1960s with, of course, Psycho 1, and then with Psycho 4 in 1990. But he really wasn't in too many of the other movies, besides the Black Hole, which was a 1979 movie. But that was it. But he
Oh,
died
see, I
of
did
actually
not know
AIDS
that.
at the age of 60.
Yeah, and I
Unfortunately,
read he
yeah.
was like a very shy guy too, which is kind of ironic.
You could kind of see that with the acting. Some actors you can tell I don't want to say they're pigeonholed into playing a certain kind of shy role, but yeah, you could almost see that, the real life Anthony Perkins, kind of that shyness coming out in his acting skills.
For sure. Do you guys have like a favorite thing about the movie that you haven't mentioned yet? Or you kind of already mentioned it?
Yeah, I think just the ending for me, just that reveal of like that, oh my God, that's really what's been going on the whole time. I knew about the ending before I actually saw it, so it was a little bit of a spoiler, but still seeing it for the first time, it's just, I don't know, you never forget that scene.
Right. And it became like, even as a kid before I saw this movie, I remember people back in the day would be like, whenever something freaky happened or a person acted creepy, they're like, oh, who are you, Norman Bates? And it just like
Yeah.
became like, I mean, that just tells you how iconic that character is. What about you, Tony? You have any favorite parts about the movie?
Actually, the whole movie introduced like a whole new genre of horror, especially at that time. There was a lot of movie and TV censors back then. So the whole shower scene was a big risk that Alfred Hitchcock had to make. It was his vision. And I think the real horror behind, Psycho is actually watch the making of Psycho, cuz that was even 10 times more horrible than the movie because of all the you know it was like a three-ring circus, him trying to get the perfect scene over and over again. It's like the Shining, that one scene with Shelley Duvall doing it over and over and over again. He had one of those kind of methods of directing.
Yeah, I heard that too. The making of it. Where did you see that?
I saw it in parts in documentaries on YouTube. Then, little clips of the actors and the producers, the sound people. Everybody had something to say, and they gathered it up on YouTube and they made a video about it. You can also watch, I forgot what year this came out in, but it's recent. It has Tony Collette in it, and it's Alfred Hitchcock. I think it's called just Hitchcock, and I think HBO released it, and it's based on actual facts and testimonies from the making of Psycho and like what happened with the casting, the recording, the shower scene, the iconic, that with the knife goes down and it's like like that.
Yeah.
All the recording. I know it sounds funny coming from me, but everything in it.
Yeah, they put out like two different like makings of the Psycho. They made one in like 2010, which was like called the Psycho Legacy, and then of course the 1997 actual footage, the making of Psycho. And I think I watched the 2010 version, and it was interesting because they basically went over everything in the of the making of Psycho, but it was a tad bit different.
I know at the Wax Museum out here, there's in LA, there's they have like a wax figure of Alfred Hitchcock, and he's standing there, and then in the back of him is the shower, and it like opens, and you can go in there and take a picture, posing it as if you're like in the shower getting ready to get killed or something like that. One of my friends did it. She like made a shocked face. So like it just shows you that's just iconic. It's awesome. Anything else you guys want to add?
Yeah, just kind of what you said. I think it's not only is it an iconic horror film, but it's just an iconic film in cinema in general, because I'd be willing to bet that most people have probably seen it. Even if you're not a fan of horror movies, you have probably seen Psycho, and it, even though it's not a traditional slasher movie of what we're used to, without it, you probably wouldn't have seen Halloween or Friday the 13th or any of those.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything you guys didn't like about the movie?
I mean, I don't want to say it doesn't age well, because it does, but obviously we're in 2021 now, and that came out in 1960. So some of the scenes, like when she falls down the steps, you can obviously it's not the most crisp thing, and it looks, it doesn't age the best, but you got to take in that it was 1960, so it's just not even really a complaint. But
Right. Yeah. And it was in black and white. We talk about that. It was a black and white. And I mean, come on, it was still entertaining even for people who were born way after, black and white was a thing. That didn't take away from the movie at all.
No, not at all. I think it adds to it, honestly.
Oh no, I agree with Derek. It adds to it. I mean, Psycho was literally the red carpet to what we have today by, Hitchcock tugging on the screen of on the strings of the sensors. We wouldn't have what we had today if Hitchcock didn't push buttons and got his way. So it's a classic.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so want to talk about, just mention quickly the sequels that had Psycho 2 came out in 1983, so several years after the first one. But it also starred Anthony Perkins and Vera Miles. Psycho 3 came out 1986, 3 years after Psycho 2. Again, Anthony Perkins. He also directed it and starred in it. Then we had a TV movie that actually came out in 1987 called Bates Motel. Anthony Perkins wasn't in that. Kurt Paul actually played Norman Bates. It has the plot of just continuing after the first movie, and it ignores the Psycho 2 and 3 sequels. Psycho 4 came out in 1990. Anthony Perkins was back. It was a sequel and a prequel to the original, in that it explains the early life of Norman Bates, which we mentioned earlier, through flashbacks. Finally, we had Psycho, the remake, in 1998, that was directed by Gus Van Sant. Vince Vaughn played Norman Bates. Julianne Moore was in the movie, Viggo Mortensen, William H. Macy, and Anne Heche. So that was it for the movies. And then we actually got a TV series from 2013 to 2017, also called Bates Motel. This television series was a prequel to the first Psycho film. It gave you a really detailed story about how Norman Bates became Norman Bates, how his mother died, how he got in that situation. Really interesting. Norman Bates is played by Freddie Highmore, very talented British actor. Vera Farmiga, very talented actress, plays Norma Bates. So, as you can see, it did have a lot of sequels, television series, TV movie, was very impactful, but I don't think anything can beat the first Psycho. Now, before we move on to the next movie, I wanted to give a few little fun facts about this movie. Now, these are from IMDb, so I'm pretty sure they're true, but if they're not, don't beat me up about it. Director Alfred Hitchcock originally envisioned the shower sequence as completely silent, but Bernard Herrmann went ahead and scored it anyway, and upon hearing it, Hitchcock immediately changed his mind. Another fun fact, when Norman spies on Marion as she gets ready to shower, the painting he actually removes from the parlor wall is of a Susanna and the Elders, in which a young woman is unknowingly watched as she bathes. Did you guys know that?
No, I actually didn't.
It's pretty cool.
I like that attention to detail.
That's freaky.
Yeah, the fine detail.
Another fun fact, Alfred Hitchcock actually used Bosco chocolate syrup instead of blood because it showed up better on camera in the black and white footage.
I heard about that one.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the last fun fact, the sound that the knife actually makes penetrating the flesh is actually the sound of a knife stabbing a cassava melon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, leaving Psycho territory and moving into the next iconic classic horror film, Halloween, 1978, directed by John Carpenter. Here's the plot. On a cold Halloween night in 1963, 6-year-old Michael Myers brutally murdered his 17-year-old sister Judith. He was sentenced and locked away for 15 years. But on October 30th, 1978, while being transferred for a court date, the 21-year-old Michael Myers steals a car and escapes Smith's Grove. He returns to his quiet hometown of Haddonfield, Illinois, where he looks for his next victims. Obviously, a classic. You can't think of Halloween without thinking of Halloween the movie. So here we have Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh's daughter, taking over the territory of Scream Queen for this. She plays Laurie Strode, who Michael, you end up finding out it's Michael's sister, and he terrorizes her. Now, this movie set the tone for her career, for sure. You have Donald Pleasance, who plays Sam Loomis, Nick Castle as Michael Myers, Tony Moran as Michael Myers, unmasked, Will Sandin as Michael Myers, age 6. Okay, another serial killer plot, but there's a family aspect to it this time, with his victim is actually his sister. What do you think about this?
Actually, a little fun fact here. The initial plan for the original movie with John Carpenter's vision wasn't to have Laurie be Michael's sister. That was introduced in part 2, which he didn't want that to happen. So fast forward, 40 years later for Halloween 2018, when John Carpenter takes over again, he kind of nixed all of the other sequels and just made a direct one from the original and took out the storyline. So technically, yes, it is her sister, but just a little fun fact there that John Carpenter did not like that aspect of the franchise.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
I mean, for me, it like reading about the plot and the different things about the movie is kind of interesting. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't initially supposed to be the role of Laurie. It was actually supposed to be Anne Lockhart for that role, but Jamie came in and auditioned 3 separate times before Carpenter actually cast her.
Anything, Tony?
Oh no, it's a great, movie. I mean, there's really not much to say. It speaks for itself, really. You can't think of Halloween, like, celebrating Halloween without sitting back going, oh, I wonder if they have Halloween on TV, on demand. You want to watch it.
Oh, yeah. I can't go Halloween personally without watching it at least once, so.
Exactly. And all of them. Even, I'll even give this. The Rob Zombie one was good. It was good. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Part 2 was another story, but part 1, I agree.
Yeah. I agree with you. We're not going to talk about that one.
All right, so unlike Psycho, doesn't take place at a motel, but it takes place in a residential neighborhood and sometimes at the school in Haddonfield, Illinois. Is Haddonfield a real place in Illinois?
I don't believe it is.
I don't know if it's a real town or not, but I do know this is when the horror genre started using white suburbia as a background, like a backset of, safe little cul-de-sac or something, like a safe neighborhood, working class, middle, upper class, neighborhood, and put terror into it. It's supposed to make you not feel safe.
Exactly, and that's exactly what it did for me.
It's actually a real town in Illinois. It is actually known for Michael Myers and the Strode family. It has a historical downtown, a recreation of the houses that are in the movie and stuff like that. So.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh. See, I just looked it up real quick, and from what I found, it is based off of Haddonfield, but in New Jersey, which was actually where Deborah Hill was from, who co-wrote and produced it with John Carpenter. So they kind of threw in her hometown there.
So we really don't know where Halloween came from, but we are grateful that it's a part of our history.
Exactly.
Because really, Jamie Lee Curtis and her mother, I guess both of them have the pedestal for being Scream Queens.
Yeah.
I mean, they're arguably, if you have a Mount Rushmore, they easily could be on there, themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Jamie, for sure.
I do want to say, and I don't know if y'all will agree to this, but Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't the first final girl. Everybody thinks that Jamie Lee Curtis is the first final girl, and it's not. It's the woman in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, yeah.
This is just a random fact. I don't know.
What
Something I
I
knew in my head.
what I love though about Jamie Lee Curtis is she wasn't like, I don't know, she was just kind of like an average woman or girl back then. I mean, she was a teenager, but she was like an average teenager. She wasn't like this sex pot or anything like that. Yet she became like, everybody loved her and still does. I mean, she's still acting. Um, the other thing I wanted to mention though about this movie is it freaked me out, I think, because it was the first time I ever saw a kid killer on film or in real life or anything. But yeah, and it's just like, just that image of him with the knife, and that's just the opening. It's like, oh my God, in the clown suit, and it's just very disturbing. And I think that movie kind of, I'm sure it got some heat for that, but I think that is just very impactful. And then it also brings up, like Norman Bates, a mental health aspect of why is this man killing his sister at such a young age, and why is he continuing to go after another sister?
I think Rob Zombie tried as hard as he could to explain everything we didn't see in the early Halloweens. I think he tried to put it as kind of like a Norman Bates. He had definite issues, but he didn't have mommy issues. In the Rob Zombie take of it, his mother was very caring. It was the people around him, like his older sister, and I guess it was his stepfather or his mother's boyfriend. They were very abusive, and he was very, recluse. He kept to himself. He had some problems, and I think Rob Zombie did the best he could with what he had to try to make a story, and he just added more to it because we honestly don't. I mean, I don't know why he does what he does. We can't just sit back and call him, "Oh, he's crazy."
Mm-hmm.
I want to see a story of why.
Right, and I think Rob Zombie was trying to, yeah, like you said, he was trying to touch on that. Because honestly, if you look back at serial killer Wikipedias, almost all of them have had abusive childhoods.
Yes, that or an accident with some brain damage to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, there's a pattern there, obviously. I mean, it's not 100% all the time, but obviously if there's that pattern, something, and as we all know, we're very affected in childhood. It makes us who we are. And sometimes we can change it when we're adults if we try and we want to, and then sometimes we don't have the awareness, or we lose our way. We make the wrong decisions. I also think it was very creepy that they were mixing a mask monster with a real life man, because it made it just, oh well, anybody can put on this mask and become this killer.
Yeah, it's a it could happen to you kind of scenario. Like it could be anyone behind that mask.
Right, and it's not unlike Psycho. You don't have to go to Bates Motel to get murdered. It could happen in school. You look outside and there's a creepy guy in the window.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, back to what Tony was saying about the Rob Zombie Halloween. A lot of people seem to hate that one, but I like specifically the backstory with young Michael. They don't seem to like that from what I've read, but I thought it was done well. At least, for what he was given. I don't think Rob Zombie had a lot of creative freedom or as much as he wanted on that, so I think he did the best that he could. Other than that, the only other backstory we've ever really gotten to Michael was Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, where you kind of find out that he's involved in this like devil cult type deal. And I think that's easily the worst Halloween ever. So I just kind of ignore that one.
All I have to say is I'm quite impressed with the how good the movie is when it was only written in like less than 2 weeks. Like it took them less than 2 weeks to write the original script, and which I find absolutely amazing for how good the movie turned out, and then how long they've stretched that story.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Wow.
I have a question. Is Halloween the start of oh, if you don't have sex you'll live kind of horror genre?
Yeah.
I read that actually when I was doing the research, and it said that it wasn't intended to be that way, though. I don't know if it was John Carpenter who said this or somebody else, or Jamie Lee Curtis might have said this. I think she said that when people started mentioning that to her, oh, you were the virgin, so you lived, she's like, I never saw it that way. It was more like those people were so distracted with having sex that they didn't know a killer was after them, whereas I was more alert because I wasn't distracted by boys.
It kind of means the same thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, but the whole thing about, oh, you are going to die if you're no longer a virgin.
Oh, see, I thought it more of, well, I'm talking more of the in a horror movie, the rule of thumb is don't have sex when there's a killer around. It's not the whole virgin thing per se. It's more of the, if there's a killer in the neighborhood and you know there's a killer, why stop and have sex? That's counterproductive.
Right, well, teenage hormones.
Exactly.
And alcohol. Because weren't some of them drunk in that movie too, I believe?
I think there was Halloween partying, but wasn't, I could be getting this confused. Again, Derek, correct me, but I think one of them was the sheriff's daughter.
I know in the Rob Zombie one, no, it definitely was in the original as well. You're right.
Yeah, so I think that person who played her was very rebellious. So I think there was drinking. I can't remember the little fine details, but yeah.
I do now remember the scene, if you remember too, where Lori and her friend are in the car driving and they're smoking a joint, I believe. And that's when she sees her dad pull up and they blow it away real quick. So yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, kind of like the sheriff's daughter, preacher's daughter kind of idea. Same thing.
Yeah.
All right, now we have to talk about the theme song. One of the most famous theme songs. The second you hear it, I don't know about you, but I get creeped out. And I think you remember, Tony, back in the day, you used to play me that damn theme song back in
It used to be my ringtone.
Yeah, but you used to play it for me because you knew it freaked me out. And you used to play it all the time on the phone.
I would play it. It was my ringtone back in the day. Before we had smartphones, we had bricks called Nokias. And my ringtone was the Halloween theme. And it was, it sounded pixelized, but it was still the Halloween theme. I would play it all the time.
Now, I have a funny story, actually. Like, Michael Myers freaked me out when I first saw this movie. I don't know why. I mean, I think just something about, like, he just grabbed a mask, took the gas station uniform thing, put it on.
A jumpsuit.
It wasn't planned. It was just happened, and it just became like this look. I'll never forget. There was one Halloween when I was probably a teenager, and it was dark, and people were coming up to our house to trick or treat and stuff. I was standing outside for a second, and then I looked, and down the street was someone dressed as Michael Myers coming, like walking quickly down the street, just like he does. And he was walking closer and closer and closer, and then he turned into like our driveway. And I'm like, oh my God. I just ran back in the house, and it turns out it was my cousin. and it's just like he freaked me out. And I just like, I don't know if that has something to do with it too, but whenever I see Michael Myers and whenever I think of just like a killer or somebody, like that freaks me out. And I just think of that image. I mean, people dress up in all kinds of costumes, but just the fact that you can dress up in a costume like that and you know it's Halloween, you know it's not real, but like the fact that you just have to walk a certain way and walk towards somebody, that tells you how iconic that costume is.
Oh yeah, most definitely. It is. And the thing is too, the Halloween costume, Michael Myers' whole getup probably cost what? $5? The mask is the guy from like Star Trek. What's his name?
William Shatner.
Yeah.
Thank you, William Shatner.
Yeah, they literally bought a Star Trek William Shatner mask, painted it white, and cut out the eye holes and threw it on the actor, basically.
Do you know whose idea that was?
I don't, actually.
Most of the main characters had to provide their own wardrobe. Curtis bought all her costumes from JCPenney for under $100.
Yeah, the budget was tight.
And the movie is a classic and made millions of dollars, even today. Again, you can't go through Halloween every October. You at least have to see one Halloween movie, if not the first.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Do it in order. That is a big rule. If you're gonna watch a collection of horror movies like Halloween, Freddy Krueger, even Hellraiser or something like that, watch them in order. It has so much appreciation when you watch them in order.
I think Derek was the one who told me this. something about the jack-o'-lantern. Is there some like face in it, or what was it?
Yes, the very beginning credits of Halloween, where it's kind of like the pumpkin, and it's like zooming in. If you look at it a certain way, the nose and kind of the eye, it's of Michael holding a knife. It's a very abstract kind of way, but in the 2018 version, they made it more prominent so you could see it a little better. But yeah.
Yeah, you told me that, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, they
Alright.
sold T-shirts of it because I used to have a T-shirt, a Halloween T-shirt of the jack-o'-lantern. I think I had the one that was more. You can tell that it was. It wasn't like hidden in the pumpkin. But I used to have the T-shirt, and it had like him holding the knife.
Yeah. All right, sequels and spin-offs. So this movie had 11 sequels and spin-offs. So Halloween 2 came out in 1981, also starred Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance reprising their roles. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, 1982. Although it was the third installment of the franchise, it was not related to Michael Myers at all. It was an entirely different plot. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, 1988. Back to the original plot with Michael Myers, and it starred Donald Pleasance, but not Jamie Lee Curtis. We had Danielle Harris, who plays Michael Myers' niece in that movie. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, 1989. Donald Pleasance again. Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, 1995. Donald Pleasance's final appearance in the film franchise. Paul Rudd played Tommy Doyle, who is the little boy that Jamie Lee Curtis babysits in the original. Halloween H2O, 20 years later, 1998. Jamie Lee Curtis is back as Laurie. Also starred Michelle Williams, Josh Hartnett. It was one of their first big films. Halloween Resurrection, 2002. Jamie Lee Curtis, back as Laurie. Also starred Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks. Halloween 2007. It was a remake of the first by Rob Zombie. We talked about that a lot earlier. Halloween 2, 2009. Rob Zombie's sequel. Halloween 2018. Jamie Lee Curtis is back. It's a direct sequel to the original Halloween, and it's kind of like another version of a part 2. Finally, this year, Halloween Kills. Stars Jamie Lee Curtis and Anthony Michael Hall from John Hughes movies, plays Tommy Doyle. And it begins where the previous film, Halloween 2018, ended. They also have plans for Halloween Ends, which is coming out next year. Don't really know anything about that yet because Halloween Kills has not come out yet, so they haven't released any information, but it's supposed to be like a continuation of that. Fun facts: the original script, titled The Babysitter Murders, had the events actually take place over the space of several days. It was a budgetary decision to change the script to have everything happen on the same day. And doing this reduced the number of costume changes and locations required. And it was decided that Halloween, the scariest night of the year, was the perfect night for this movie to happen. Of all the female leads, all the girls are supposed to be in high school. Only Jamie Lee Curtis was actually a teenager at the time of shooting. Another fact, because PJ Soles, who played Linda, because her shirt was open for the scene where she's strangled with a telephone cord, an alternate version was shot for the trailer and publicity shots, where she's actually wearing a bathrobe to cover up. Another fact, John Carpenter was actually the voice of Annie's boyfriend Paul, whom we hear on the phone, talking to Lindsay, and a minute later to Annie. Last fun fact, to ensure Michael Myers would break the window of the station wagon as Dr. Loomis approaches the insane asylum, a wrench was actually attached to his forearm and hand. It was then painted flesh-colored to hide from the camera. All right, moving on to Friday the 13th. Came out in 1980, directed by Sean S. Cunningham. The movie is about a group of camp counselors who are stalked and murdered by an unknown assailant while trying to reopen a summer camp, which was the site of a child's drowning in a grisly double murder years before. So Jason with the hockey mask became known as the killer in Friday the 13th. His mother, however, was the killer in the original. Now, this movie gave me Psycho vibes, just in different order here. You had the mother who was the insane one, and then the son who was the supposed dead one in the beginning.
Well, I don't think she was insane to begin with. I think the neglect from the camp counselors and the adults, which made Jason drown, and plus the bullying he had because he was deformed, I think all that on top of each other, she just went crazy.
Yeah, she became insane.
Yeah, she became insane, but she wasn't unlike Psycho. Norman's mom. I don't know why I thought of Eddie Murphy right there, but unlike Norman's mom was very sick. If you watch all the Psychos, she was born sick. Jason's mom wasn't. I don't think she was born sick. I think she was either you're a product of your upbringing, or you're a product of your nature of what happens around you. And I
Right.
think that's what happened to Jason's mom, and she just wanted to get justice the best way she could.
For sure. And Betsy Palmer played Mrs. Voorhees. She did such an amazing job. Adrienne King was the main survivor, Alice. Now, this movie was also one of Kevin Bacon's first films. He plays Jack. The plot is interesting, I think, because the franchise starts off with one killer, and then it goes to another, who becomes the main killer, Jason. Like we said, the mother and then Jason. The setting is at Camp Crystal Lake. Do we know what city it takes place in the movie?
I actually don't. I don't know if it's ever really mentioned.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever mentioned. So here you have just this nice looking woman in a blue sweater who becomes the killer. I thought it was cool how this movie brought like just a regular mask. It's not like a special mask like Michael Myers and the William Shatner mask and just kind of cut the eyes out. And it brought just like a mask that you wear to play hockey, and it became like this evil mask. I thought that was cool how they did that, even though it had nothing to do with hockey.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in and say I think it's funny. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think at this point, when people see a hockey mask, they almost think of Jason Voorhees before they think of a hockey goalie. So that's how iconic that's become.
Yeah.
It
That's
is,
crazy.
especially with the markings on his mask. Even
Yeah.
if you're a hockey player, I've noticed hockey players put the markings on their mask because they're such fans of Jason.
That's just crazy how you can make something that already exists into something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Halloween, the killer is masked for the most part in the rest of the films. Has a creepy camp vibe, made camp creepy. The songs they play in the beginning with the guitar supposed to be like kumbaya songs, and they're actually just creepy. Had the rainstorm effect, helped with the creepiness. What do you guys think about this movie?
I actually didn't, when I first saw it, I was already knowledgeable of Friday the 13th being Jason Voorhees. So when I first saw it, I was going through the whole film. You don't really know who the killer is until the end. So when you get to the end and it's Pamela Voorhees and you don't see Jason, I was just so confused as a kid as to what I was watching. And it was never one that I really grew up with, like the franchise in general. So it's not really my favorite. And even the original, I don't even think is in my top 3 of the franchise. But when I'm in the mood to just watch like a campy, kind of cheesy, just slasher film, that's definitely a go to.
I agree. It's a go-to slasher film. It's kind of like let's be real for a second. If you want to call yourself a horror movie fan and you love the genre, you kind of have to watch Jason. It's a rite of passage. Like you have to, Friday the 13th, Psycho, Halloween, all these, classics. You cannot, maybe I'm being snotty, but you cannot call yourself a horror movie fan if you've never seen Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, and I think too, yeah, what you're saying, Derek, where it's like everybody, even people who haven't seen the films, they know Jason's the killer, but yet he's not really the killer until the second one. That just wasn't like a known fact, and I think because I felt the same way when I found out. I was like, "Where's Jason?" I thought he was the killer.
It's funny too, and he doesn't even get his iconic hockey mask until the 3rd film. So you go 3 whole films before you get the full iconic Jason look, yet that's what everyone knows.
Why do you think that is?
I think just because before, when we had horror movies, specifically slashers like Psycho and Halloween that we mentioned, there were killings, but they weren't necessarily the most violent or brutal. But with Friday the 13th, Tom Savini, greatest special effects artist hands down of all time, he brought that just gory, gruesome aspect to it. And I think it was just something different that people were interested in.
Right. Any favorite parts of the film?
I like the aspect that you don't know who the killer is. You kind of see the first person. You know that it's not someone that everyone is afraid of, because I remember one of the deaths, I forget the guy's name, but the guy that had the glasses outside checking in the rain with his yellow raincoat, he sees the person, he's like, "Oh, it's you." And he goes up to like almost hug him, and then the camera just cuts to another scene and you assume that he dies off camera. So it's one of those things where like who is the killer, because clearly they're not afraid of him, and then you realize that it's this old lady, and it's kind of like, it's interesting.
I think the whole buildup of that, I mean, one of the classic elements in a horror movie, especially one that has mystery, it's the who done it type thing. Like, who could it be? And when I originally saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's his mom. And from that day forward, any kid that was ever bullied wished their mom was her. I mean, she, me growing up, I was bullied. I mean, I guess, everybody gets bullied. And if my mom wanted to, yeah. Trying to keep it PG. But yeah, but again, on all seriousness, it's a classic. It's one of those top 10 classic movies. And the build up to it, and especially like Derek said, even his whole aesthetic of him, it took time to do. You can tell that they put thought into it, and they just didn't, like, I'm not trying to put shade on Halloween or anything like that. They put thought into it, especially what the outcome of him was going to look like with his mask.
Right.
Yeah, and
They
he like changes every movie too. He gets a little more kind of decrepit, a little more dead, and you really see, and even the continuity, like I think it's part 4 when he gets quote unquote killed, he gets kind of like chopped in the head. And then by the next time, part 6 or whatever, because part 5 wasn't really Jason, but you see a little chip in his mask from when the axe hit his head. So they keep the consistency throughout with the costume, but change it up a little bit. And I really like that too.
Mm-hmm. I like all of them, all the movies. I like all of them except Jason X.
See, that's actually one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was that diehard fan with Freddy versus Jason came out, and I was, movie theater going there. I think I at least saw it twice in the movie theater. It was amazing, and I remember when Jason X came out, and I was like, what is this? What am I watching?
I think I like it because, like I said, I wasn't a fan growing up of it. So whenever I want to see a Jason movie, I just want to see Jason just hack people up. And if you go into Jason X thinking it's going to be some cinematic masterpiece, you're going to be disappointed. You got to just understand it's a corny, cheesy space horror movie and kind of appreciate it for what it is.
No, you do. I mean, I get that. I guess it's sci-fi isn't really my
Yeah, I agree
genre.
there.
The most sci-fi I got in a horror movie would probably be Rocky Horror Picture Show, because that was a little sci-fi.
Yeah.
It was. If anybody watched it till the end, yes, he was an alien. I spoiled it.
I have to just put out there too. I don't know if you agree, Tony, but you know the woman who plays Brenda in this movie?
In the first one?
Yeah, she reminds me so much of Gina Davis. Can you see
Oh
that?
God, I haven't seen the first one
Oh, okay.
in at
All
least
right.
2 years. No, I've seen the first one, don't get me wrong, but it's been at least 2 years.
Yeah, she just like looks like her. It just reminds me. I always think it's her and it's not, but yeah. Okay, so moving on to the sequels and spin-offs. Friday the 13th Part 2 came out in 1981, so a year after. Also starred Adrienne King and Betsy Palmer reprising their roles. Friday the 13th Part 3, 1982. It was a continuation with different characters. Friday the 13th The Final Chapter, 1984. It starred Crispin Glover and Corey Feldman. Corey's character, Tommy Jarvis, is introduced, and the character would continue for the next 2 films. Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, 1985, continuation. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, 1986. It was the last one to feature the character of Tommy Jarvis as the protagonist. Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, 1988, came out years after the last one. Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, 1989. This one, Jason stalks a bunch of high school graduates on a ship en route to New York City. Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, 1993. Continuation takes place years after the last one. Jason X, 2002. Futuristic type plot. Jason's frozen and he comes back. Freddy vs. Jason, 2003. Crossover between Friday the 13th series with Jason and Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger, and puts them against each other. Friday the 13th, 2009 was a reboot of the original. And finally, Friday the 13th television series was from 1987 to 1990, but it actually had no story connection to the films, and it wasn't even based on a killer named Jason. They just used that title to draw people in. Fun facts about the movie. The movie was filmed at Camp No Bosco in New Jersey. The camp is still in operation, and it has a wall of Friday the 13th memorabilia to honor that the movie was set there. Kevin Bacon's character, lying in bed with his throat impaled by an arrow, has the blood in his neck making little bubbles. I don't know if you remember that. It's during his kill scene. Now, originally it was just meant to seep out, but the arrangement of the tube with blood didn't work. And the makeup artist, special effects technician, Tom Savini, ended up blowing into the tube to make it flow, causing an unintended but ultimately used bubbling effect. Next, Sally Field was actually offered the role of Alice Hardy, but she turned it down. And the scene with the snake, now Derek already told me this and it was disturbing to me, but the scene with the snake, if you don't know, was not in the script. And it was an idea from special effects technician Tom Savini after an experience in his own cabin during the filming. Now, the snake in the scene was actually real, including its on-screen death. Finally, Harry Crosby, who played Bill in this movie, is actually Bing Crosby's son. Moving on, A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984, the year I was born. 1984. Okay. Directed by Wes Craven. Here's the plot. Several Midwestern teenagers fall prey to Freddy Krueger, a disfigured midnight mangler who preys on the teenagers in their dreams, which in turn kills them in reality. After investigating the phenomenon, Nancy begins to suspect that a dark secret kept by her and her friend's parents may be the key to unraveling the mystery. But can Nancy and her boyfriend Glenn solve the puzzle before it's too late? Alright, so this movie was different in the way that it happened in reality, but it was really happening in nightmares. First time I've ever seen a movie like that. Obviously, we had Robert Englund, played Freddy Krueger in all the films. Heather Langenkamp played Nancy. And Johnny Depp played Glenn. And this was actually Johnny Depp's film debut. Now, who wasn't terrified of Freddy as a kid, right? What do you guys think?
I think everybody was. If you said you weren't, you're lying to yourself.
Because I was about to say I wasn't, but again, I was kind of brought up on horror movies. You know what I mean? Like, so the concept of him when I got older and when I started to be an adult, and you know, when you're an adult, you overanalyze things, and you're kind of like, you put things together like sleep paralysis. You know, like all this stuff. Like you're like, oh, you're very vulnerable in your dreams, and you're very vulnerable when you sleep because, you know, you're supposed to be in the safest place in the world, in your bed, in your home with locked doors. And the concept of it when I got older, when in my teens, I was like, oh, he scares the hell out of me because it could happen because, you know, again, the sleep paralysis, you know, if you want to think about it that way, they say there's a sleep paralysis demon.
Yeah.
You guys ever heard about that? I think Insidious, that movie talked about it a little bit more, but like if you put that concept into play, it makes you go, oh, we're kind of screwed if this ever was real.
Yeah, I think the reason I say most kids are always afraid is because most children, if you have a nightmare, get terrified. It's a nightmare. You generally grow out of that a little bit the older you get. So the fact that there's now this monster that can kill you in your nightmares, I just think that freaked most people out.
But come on, like
Yeah.
just the way he looked in general was freaky.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't like a mask; it was him.
Yeah, that's why That's why I think Robert Englund, he's almost irreplaceable as Freddy Krueger to me. He just kind of is, because it's his face. It's not just a mask. It's the look, the voice, just everything.
For sure.
It's iconic. Him acting it is, I can't picture anybody. I agree with Derek, because the new one that came out, it wasn't the same, was it? You didn't get that same vibe from it?
I will
that
say
make
this. I agree, but I don't necessarily put that on Jackie Earle Haley. I think I'd be willing to give him another shot as Freddy, because at this point, I mean, Robert Englund is his age, so if there's another nightmare, he probably can't do it, or
Mhm.
wouldn't want to, maybe. So I'd be willing to give Jackie Earle Haley another shot, because I think he did a good job. It's just taking some time to get used to it not being Robert Englund. My issue with the remake was everything else, mainly I forget which Mara sister played the role, but she even, I think, went on air saying that she had no love for horror films, no passion, didn't care about the role at all, and it definitely showed in her acting to me.
See, I did not know about that. And that kind of, if you're an actor and actress and you're going to be in a classic, genre as horror and be in, Nightmare on Elm Street movies, you're going to have to know what you're doing, and you're going to have some appreciation for this, because you're just letting us down.
Exactly. Especially in a genre that I would argue is the most diehard fans in terms of, so like, horror fans. They're picky with their movies.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I mean, I'm wearing a Freddy Krueger shirt right now. I swear to God, I am. And you have to appreciate what you're doing. If not, don't do it. Don't do it for the money. Have some respect for the fandom behind it.
Yeah, and obviously Freddy's iconic costume. I don't think anybody can wear like a dark green and red striped sweater and you don't think of him, right? Like,
No, even a fedora at this point, like.
um, yeah, and I thought it was cool how they combined sort of like the residential setting. So it took place in the fictional town of Springwood, Ohio, and they combined the residential setting, the school, all that, with the boiler room and the nightmares. So you had like two very opposite settings there, and that was all due to the nightmares. Anything's possible in a nightmare. Like you said, you don't have control.
I think too, real quick, now that
Mm,
I'm thinking about this, what adds to it a little bit is, I'm pretty sure, well, maybe not every town, but most towns, especially bigger towns, it seems like there's an Elm Street everywhere. So like everyone kind of grew up around an Elm Street, so it's just a little bit
yeah.
thing like, oh, is that the, like, just a little
Yeah,
bit thing.
Yeah, there's an Elm Street where I live too, in my city.
yeah. I think the movie was named after one of the, believe, either one of the crew members or somebody related to somebody involved in the movie. They lived on Elm Street or something as a kid, and of course you had, like, Halloween, where it had that iconic theme song. You had the iconic creepy nursery rhyme for this movie.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want to make a horror movie and you want it to be gold, put kids in it.
Yep, I was gonna say creepy children singing, and you got a winner.
Yeah, once any
Especially,
horror movie where there's a kid in it, doesn't matter which horror movie it is or what branch it comes from, you put a kid in it. And I'm like, nope, not today. No. I was like, this is going to be bad. Anytime you hear a kid laughing, or even if you see a kid walk by and you're like, no.
Yeah, something about the innocence of a child. I think children are supposed to be innocent, and when you put it in that kind of setting, it's very disturbing.
yeah, exactly. I've heard a joke before. I forget the exact like expression of it, but it's like something along the lines of like, children laughing is the most adorable thing in the world until you realize you don't have any children around. It's just like that it becomes instantly creepy. Like,
Hmm. I know, I've seen that. They made a meme of that, and I was like, I relate.
Yeah. Any things you didn't like about the movie?
honestly, no, not really. Because I think, especially the original, it's my favorite. Dream Warriors is a close second, but the original always has been my favorite. I think it's the perfect blend of creepy, but with some comedy. Because Freddy Krueger has his iconic one-liners that are just amazing, and he tiptoes the line without making it too over the top. Now they do get way too ridiculous later on, but just the original is the perfect blend of creepy and funny to me.
Don't you have Robert Englund's autograph?
I do. He actually did sign a birthday card for me. He did this movie in my hometown. there was this abandoned insane asylum kind of across the street where I lived, and it's tore down now, but they filmed I think it was called Sleep Clinic or something like that. It was like they made a movie at some point, but this was like a TV show that had Robert Englund and I think maybe Danielle Harris in it. And yeah, they filmed it in there. And yeah, my dad went across the street, was like, "Hey, you signed this for my son?" And he did.
That's awesome. Do we not talk about his knives for fingers?
Oh, yeah, I don't know how we missed that. I think too, that's like the beginning. It's a really good beginning scene because you start like in his boiler room where you just kind of see him preparing his glove. And it's I mean, it is unique. It's probably the most unique weapon in horror, maybe just movies. I mean, yeah, everyone uses a knife or a machete or guns or stuff. He's the only, well, okay, Wolverine, but the only other person that has like knives for fingers. It's just different.
And it's an option, though. That's the thing about Freddy Krueger. His gloves are the knives. You know what I mean? It's an option. It's not something that is,
Yeah.
like Wolverine, like you can just pull him out whenever. That's his weapon of choice, and it makes me want to know more. Like I was talking to Derek about this I think a couple weeks ago, and I was like, you know what? I want origin stories. I want to know how they do it. Why do they keep coming back? We know why Chucky comes back. We know how kind of, what's going on with Freddy Krueger, but we don't know why he just keeps on coming back, because it seems like to be a different,
He's
he's
coming
there
for
for a different
you.
reason. Well, I mean, yeah, he is. We're going out to dinner tomorrow night. We're gonna talk about a couple things, but like his story is, obviously revenge. Most of these, horror movies, the classics are about revenge. But I want to know why they keep coming back. Like, aren't you tired? Like, do you get like do you like why are
Well,
you here?
when you think about it, he's always in dreams, so maybe he's never tired.
Well, not unless now I'm not good with the sequel names, but the one with his mother, is that
Dream
Dreamchild?
Child, the fifth one,
That
yeah.
one, yes, that one explains a little bit of his origins. And that made me more invested, and I go, okay, what happened to his mother in that sane asylum? Which I don't think I can say on here, so I'm not going to say, but if you want to know, watch the movie. Um, that's the reason why he's a little, tapped in the head. And then his adopted father, he was abusive to him. And Freddie just took it. But then I wanted to know what in between that and to the point where the townspeople, set the boiler room on fire, because he did die in a boiler room. I think that's his location of choice in the dreams. I want to know everything in between there. Like Rob Zombie, you're good at this. Get on it, because I want to know everything in between, and it's so blurred on the kids. Like, did he do it or did he not do it? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, in the new movie they said that he did it, but in the actual real good movies of Freddy, you're like, what did he do so bad for the townspeople to do a witch hunt? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be interested in a origin. The only thing is, and I guess it depends on the director you get, but because I think back to the Texas Chainsaw origin one, they just seem to
Hmm.
never be very good. I don't know why, if it's just the director or it's hard to come up with origins for these icons, but it would definitely need to be the right person to do it.
And Texas Chainsaw has like what, 3 different origins?
Well, I mean, I think it came out like 20. I think it's just called Leatherface actually, and it's about how he literally became Leatherface. We started off as a kid, and it just, I don't know, it was okay, but
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it didn't. It wasn't. You want something satisfying. If
exactly.
you're gonna add to the list of movies like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Child's Play, if you're gonna add to it, have some appreciation to your fans, because we notice. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying all the movies are horrible. I'm just saying, there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of movies. Why aren't, how many movies did Halloween have?
11 almost.
11,
Yeah.
yes.
11 movies, and I don't know how he comes back to life. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, what's his motivation to come back
Yeah.
to life? Is it the cult thing? Is it
Well,
something with the lake?
yeah. I think a big problem is, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people, maybe upper Hollywood directors, whatever it is, they just assume that people just want the mindless killing and horror, and they don't care about the backstories when it just couldn't be farther from the truth. They care
Well,
so much about the history and plot of everything.
that's true. Maybe when I was younger, it would be all about, the hack and slash. Okay.
Yeah.
I can get that. But now that I'm older, I'm kind of like, who hurt you? What's going on? Like,
Yeah.
I want to know the story of how you got here and how you keep, like, how are you coming back?
It's true.
We know how Chucky does it, which we'll explain, but I'm just saying, I don't understand. Is it when the job is done? Because Jason's job was done a long time ago. His mom took care of it.
They're coming back so they can make more money on more films.
I,
Exactly.
which I mean, I can get that. It's just I want to know more. Now that I'm older, I kind of want to be like, what makes you tick?
Yeah, you want to know if they're going to bring him back, you want them to have a good backstory.
Yes, like just like how we said earlier, Rob Zombie did Halloween. That gave me enough to be like, okay, now I know who hurt you. Now I know you have issues. But how are you surviving all this? Because I know you don't have insurance and you're not going to no hospital to get fixed. So what's making you, is it pure hatred? Like, I want to know what.
Well, I will say this because I just now thought of it. I guess with Michael, you could just make the argument that he was just born evil because I think it might have been in the original, but I'm not sure. Loomis makes a statement that he's just pure evil. Like he's just blackness in his eyes. There's nothing there. And because he killed at such a young age as a kid, you could almost make that argument that, yeah, maybe he was just born evil.
I mean, kids can be born evil. We've seen many cases in real life of kids just doing the unthinkable. I don't know. Maybe I'm being selfish. I want to see more. I want, cuz I want to know for sure. But I guess, that's what most movies do, especially horror movies. They leave it up to your imagination.
Yeah, now that I think about it though, with Halloween, I love the Rob Zombie backstory, but now that I'm thinking about it, I with Michael specifically, I almost think I'd rather prefer the unknown because he's the shape, I think that kind of adds to it, but I still see what you're saying, yeah.
I can understand you not wanting to know the origins, but wouldn't you want to know, like, you don't want to know the why, but you want to know the how? Like, I still
Yeah,
want to know
yeah.
how he comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because you got to think, in the movies, he was killing people he thought did him wrong. Especially Rob Zombie's remake, expressed that a lot. And he killed anybody who got into his way to try to stop it. But,
Even if
like,
they didn't though, because if you remember that one guy, uh, who's the actor? Danny Trejo, I believe, played him.
yeah, he
He
was a
uh
nice janitor, the only one
he
nice
loved
to him.
Mikey. Mikey liked him, and he still turned on him and killed him. So
Which makes it confusing because it's like, I want to know how they tick.
Yeah, one of the other things I wanted to mention that I thought was kind of interesting was so Freddy Krueger has knives for fingers. Then you have this is Johnny Depp's first film, and then he later became Edward Scissorhands, who also had knives for fingers. I don't know if there's any connection there, but that was cool. What do you guys think? Do you think there's a connection?
yeah, I never even thought of that until you just mentioned it, but
Yeah.
there very well could be.
All right, so sequels and spin-offs. We have A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, came out in 1985. Robert Englund was back, follows a kid who moves into Nancy from the first film's old house. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, 1987. Robert Englund again comes back as Freddy. Heather Langenkamp returns as Nancy as well. Patricia Arquette was actually in this movie too. A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, 1988. Robert Englund reprised his role, and it was a continuation. A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, 1989. Robert Englund comes back. Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, 1991. Originally supposed to be the last one, but that didn't hold up. Robert Englund came back, and there were big celebrities that actually made cameos in this one, including Johnny Depp, who was in the original, years after the last. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, 1994. It doesn't follow the stories of the previous ones, but instead makes Freddie a fictional character attacking the cast, including Heather Langenkamp, who appeared in the previous films, playing herself while making a movie about him. Robert Englund, of course, came back. Freddy vs. Jason, 2003. This was a crossover between Friday the 13th series with Jason and Nightmare on Elm Street series with Freddy, as I mentioned earlier. It puts them against each other. Robert Englund again plays Freddy. A Nightmare on Elm Street, 2010. This was a reboot of the original. Robert Englund does not appear as Freddy for the first time. Jackie Earle Haley appears as Freddy instead. And lastly, Freddy's Nightmares was an anthology series from 1988 to 1990. It was hosted by Robert Englund as Freddy, and it featured different horror stories each week. Some fun facts about A Nightmare on Elm Street. Heather Langenkamp's boyfriend at the time of the shooting is actually credited for creating Freddy's nursery rhyme. Charlie Sheen was interested in the role of Glenn, but according to producer Robert Shea, he wanted more money than the production could afford. It would take about 3 hours to get Robert Englund into his Freddy makeup. And finally, Heather Langenkamp beat over 200 actresses for the role of Nancy Thompson. Some of the actresses that tried out for the role were Jennifer Grey, Demi Moore, Courtney Cox, Tracy Gold, and Claudia Wells. Moving on to Child's Play, 1988, directed by Tom Holland. The film mainly focuses on Chucky, a notorious serial killer who frequently escapes death by performing a voodoo ritual to transfer his soul into a good guy's doll. Now, this was one of the first scary movies I saw as a kid. And I don't know why, but a lot of children saw this back in the day, from what I remember, which was pretty odd to me as an adult now, but back then it was just normal. And I'm not sure if that's because adults thought, oh, it's a doll, it's fine. But yeah, so we had a killer doll. Charles E. Ray, aka Chucky the doll, was played by Brad Dourif. Alex Vincent as Andy, the kid that he terrorizes. Catherine Hicks as Karen. Chris Sarandon as Detective Mike Norris. The plot, this was the first time I've seen a doll as a killer. He was possessed, and yeah, I don't know. As I said, a lot of kids saw it. It took place in Chicago, Illinois. I never looked at dolls the same way again. They made the doll in the stores after the movie. It sold out. It's still made. What do you guys think about this?
I love it. You mentioned a lot of kids saw it. I was one of them. This was actually the first horror movie I ever saw. I think I was like maybe 3 or 4, and I cried at the end. I was so scared, and I fell in love with horror movies ever since then. So it definitely has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, did you guys see it as a kid, Tony and Josh?
I did, and then my mom dragged us out of the movie theater because she realized what it was.
Yeah, did parents just not pay attention to what the movie actually was? Because I feel like so many kids saw this either with their parents or without. Like they would rent it in the video store back in the day when it first came out.
I mean, the cover to Child's Play. Now, I could be getting the covers wrong, but the covers to Child's Play, wasn't it Chucky with a weird smile on his face with scissors cutting off a Jack-in-a-Box head?
That was part either 2 or 3. The cover for the original Child's Play is just like the apartment building with like kind of a lightning bolt down the middle, and like you see Chucky's eye or something. So it's very vague. It is creepy, but it's not. Yeah.
That's enough for me as a parent to be like, no. I was lucky enough, again, to live in a house where, we would watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space to Chucky. Like, if it was on TV, my mom's like, if you get nightmares, it's not my fault. We watched, whatever we wanted to watch. So I wasn't really too scared of dolls or anything like that. Like, I'm more scared of porcelain dolls. Those things are creepy. But
yes.
yeah, like I don't even know why they became a thing. Or like the porcelain dolls that if you sit them up or you lay them down and their eyes open and shut.
Yeah.
Screw that.
Yeah. No, I won't. I will leave that house. I will leave your house.
Yeah, no, I don't do them either. They're the creepiest thing. I could give me Chucky dolls, Michael, Alfredo, porcelain dolls can go to hell.
Exactly.
It seems
but,
like every Portuguese home that you ever went to, your grandmother would have porcelain dolls. And all I
Okay,
have to
Portuguese for
say is
the
the
listeners
one.
that don't know, Josh. What
Yeah.
is a Portuguese?
A Portuguese person. You know, you'd go to
we call ourselves Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Yeah, we're Portuguese.
But you'd go to your grandmother's house or your vovo's house, and you would see these dolls on a shelf. And then when your vovo died or your grandmother died, you know, for some odd, messed up freaking reason, your mother would then bring him to your house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's been a few
But-
times that they've blinked at me. Never again.
Oh yeah, because they have the eyes, and sometimes, like, you know how they have like the motion eyes,
Yep.
and sometimes, you know, sometimes they move on their own. Like either a car goes by and it shakes the ground or something. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. No, my Vovo had a couple porcelain dolls, but also, you know, Vovo's houses, you know, they had creepy pictures up too. You know, like the scary religious pictures. Us Portuguese people, we were born with instill of fear.
As a child,
I'm
I'd
just-
rather have gone see this movie than go to my vovo's house.
Yeah, like Vovo would have been like if you were crying or screaming like, "Oh my god, the doll's about to get me." They'd be like, "What the hell do you want me to do about it? You want me to get hurt?" That's a Vovo.
Yeah, I think the only one
God
who
bless her.
can't relate is Derek, because Derek is not
Yeah.
Portuguese in the slightest. Why do you think that is, though? So you're saying like I totally get it, but a porcelain doll is more creepy than a doll with a mean face and a knife. I mean, is it because of the more realistic childlike thing, or?
It's more or less a porcelain doll looks innocent.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
too pretty. But if you look at a doll with a knife, you're like, "Oh, your intentions are to kill me." You look at a porcelain doll and you're like, "What the fuck are you thinking about? Why are you looking at me like that?"
What
Do
is
you get
this
what I'm saying?
trickery?
Yeah, it's like, did you just blink at me?
It's like having a cat. You know, when you look at a cat and the cat looks back at you and you're like, "Oh, the cat looks cute." But in reality, that cat is like plotting your murder. That's what like
That's how I
looking
feel.
at
Yeah.
a porcelain doll. I had a Chucky doll when I was a kid. And I had no problem playing with that thing. I would sleep with it, no problem. But you put a porcelain doll anywhere near my darn room? Nope.
No. My ex-wife had one. We kept it in the closet. I said it was Mia the doll. Mia the doll. And I knew it was in the closet. And that creeped me out just as much because what do porcelain dolls remind you of? Kind of Puppet Master. That creeped me out. That creeped me out more than Child's Play.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the innocence thing that we talked about earlier with the kids. There's just
Mhm.
something when something's not supposed to be creepy, it's creepy. Whereas like you see a killer doll with a knife, it's like, oh, it's supposed to be. You know, it's like a
Yeah.
psychological thing.
Yeah, isn't there like a part of the movie where there's a store filled with Chucky dolls?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right? So that all right, so that Chucky doll is going for online on eBay for over $2,000. A
I
prop
believe
from
it.
that movie. That's ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah,
No,
insane.
it's not. If me or Derek had $2,000 that we could spend right now,
This is true.
you think that we won't get that doll? I'm
Exactly.
telling you, I would not only get that doll, but I would definitely get the Tiffany doll too.
Tiffany, we will get into that.
Ooh, Jennifer Tilly.
Yeah, and that whole freaking chant that they do. What is that? That damn.
It's a voodoo
Ade
spell.
due dumbala.
Yeah.
Give me the power, I beg of you. Sakus and tie. I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, you got it.
Wow,
You got
know
it.
it by heart.
Well, he says it so much. He says it so
Yeah.
much because he wants to get into. But you notice this though with Chucky, he's
Wait,
desperate to get
wait.
into it.
He wants to get into what? Oh, you mean? I thought you meant. I thought you
Oh,
meant.
no,
I thought you meant Derek.
No. I mean Chucky. I'm gonna call him Chucky because I'm not gonna call him by his person name. He's so desperate to get into a body so fast to get rid of the doll, not only because there's a timer to the whole thing, but he ignores everybody else, but he just wants to be in a kid.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Well, what I'm getting at is he wants to relive life.
Yeah.
And that's even more scary because what if Chucky succeeded with Andy and then we have a little serial killer kid?
I think that was probably his whole goal, is just keep repeating. Once he grows up, grows old in that body, just go into another kid and repeat.
That was the
Rinse,
that's
kill,
how
and
I
repeat.
felt with the Bride of Chucky.
Yeah.
Huh?
Rinse, kill, and repeat.
Exactly. I mean, if you had a voodoo spell that could make you live forever and you could share that spell like he did with Tiffany and you could share it with your loved ones, wouldn't you do it a couple times?
I don't know.
And you could start over. You start over as a kid and you could read with your adult brain. I would do it at least once. I would be smart. They'll be
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, that little 8-year-old, smart." And I'm just, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a 36-year-old man in an 8-year-old body." Yeah.
So the movie definitely makes us think about bringing our souls to younger people. Anything else?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the whole point of he wants to you notice how he could have gone into anybody's body throughout that whole even in the first movie. He could have gone in anybody's
Well,
body, but he chose
no.
Andy for a reason.
That's not technically true.
No?
How do I explain this? The way the voodoo spell is set up, he is required to transfer his soul into the first person that he told his secret to, that he's actually Charles Lee Ray, which happened to be Andy. So he was almost forced to do that.
Oh, true.
Or
That's
stay
right.
as a doll.
But he wasn't forced to tell him.
Well, no, but he didn't know at the time that that was the thing. He went to meet with not Eddie Caputo, but the other guy, the voodoo guy, and he said that, and at that point he already realized that, well, now I got to be a kid.
So that would explain. Well, it explains why with the new movie, well, not the remake movies, but the new movie, which one is it, Derek? Andy comes back and he has Chucky kind of spawns into other Chuckies. Is that the Cult of Chucky?
Yes.
Or is that
the worst one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And because he could have gone to anybody. But that's the thing too. It kind of the Bride of Chucky then kind of screws that scenario up because neither Tiffany nor Chucky told I forgot their names. They didn't tell them who they were.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
still tried to do it.
They kind of did, though, because, I mean, they didn't really they didn't tell him who they were, but they revealed themselves as talk. So I don't know. I guess it's kind of I don't wanna
Is it
call it a loophole,
revealing?
but yeah, I don't know. It's just,
It's not per se, "Hey, I'm Tony."
yeah.
It's more of a, "Hey, I can move and I can," you know what I mean? But no, that still
But
doesn't make
at
sense.
the same token, maybe that wouldn't have worked. Maybe they would have tried to transfer their souls and it would have failed. We never got to that point in the movie, so so
I'm just gonna say this. We're trying to make sense of a movie that 2 dolls had relations and they had a seed of Chucky. We cannot make sense of this is why I love Chucky, because it's just like, did that just have you guys seen Seed of Chucky?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, that's
So
unanimously everyone's most hated movie, but I actually like it. It's not the
I
greatest,
like it.
but
I like it. I mean, I think, the casting of Jennifer Tilly over and over again, like in that, like Jennifer Tilly playing Tiffany, but playing Jennifer Tilly.
yeah.
Like I was like, that's too much. I love Jennifer Tilly. Beautiful woman, amazing actress. But that's too much. I want to see Tiffany. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah, we're trying to make sense of a movie that tried to explain to us how Chucky, a doll, and Tiffany, a doll, had a baby. So you can't make sense of it.
Yeah. All right. So sequels and spin-offs. Child's Play 2, 1990. Brad Dourif played Chucky again. Alex Vincent came back. It was a continuation from the first movie. Child's Play 3, 1991. Brad Dourif again. Jason Whalen actually played Andy in that one, and it took place 8 years after the second film. Bride of Chucky, 1998. Brad Dourif came back as Chucky. As we just said, Jennifer Tilly, she played Tiffany Valentine, Chucky's bride. Katherine Heigl was in this movie, as well as John Ritter. It was a more humorous movie, and it was steps away from the Indy Barclay storyline. Seed of Chucky 2004, Brad Dourif came back, Jennifer Tilly came back. Billy Boyd was the son of Chucky and Tiffany, and it was a story about him. Curse of Chucky 2013, Brad Dourif came back years later, and it was the return of Chucky with a new story. Cult of Chucky 2017, Brad Dourif came back, Jennifer Tilly came back, Alex Vincent also came back as Andy. Child's Play 2019 was a remake of the original. Mark Hamill actually did the voice of Chucky. Gabriel Bateman was Andy Barclay. Then we had Chucky's Vacation Slides in 2005. This was actually a short film that was released in the special features section of Seed of Chucky. It's about Chucky, Tiffany, and Glenn when they come back from a vacation and look at slides of photos and notice corpses in the background. Chucky Invades, 2013, another short film of videos leading up to the release of The Curse of Chucky on DVD. Finally, Chucky came out this year. It's a TV series. Brad Dourif plays Chucky, and Alex Vincent returns as Andy, and it's a continuation from the original movies. Fun facts. The original working title for the film was Batteries Not Included. Before it became known, Spielberg was actually making a film with the same title, so they didn't go with that title. It was changed to Blood Buddy before actually settling on Child's Play. In the original script, the director wanted Charles Lee Ray as Andy's father. Finally, Chucky's full name, Charles Lee Ray, is derived from notorious killers Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, who assassinated John F. Kennedy, and James Earl Ray, the assassin of Martin Luther King Jr. Alright guys, that wraps up part 1 of the 3-part Halloween special. I want to thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out part 2 and part 3 for more Halloween fun. We'll be having discussions on modern horror films, as well as discussions on paranormal investigations, true crime stories, real-life spooky stories, and other fun Halloween traditions. We'll also have an exclusive interview with a very special guest who plays one of the most terrifying killers in horror movie history. All episodes will be out by October 31st, so check them out wherever you found this one. Until then, I hope you all glow and shine bright.